attracting sperm whales on their migration to Antarctica. Sperm whales are the world's largest predator, reaching sizes equivalent to 4 elephants. Whales usually spend around 10 minutes on the surface, breathing every 15 seconds, and can stay submerged for over 2 hours while hunting prey such as the giant squid. The blowhole on the front left of the whale's head creates a 3 to 5 meter high spout, blown at a forward angle of about 45 degrees. Large, powerful tail flukes are proportionately greater than any other whale, enabling rapid acceleration. Christchurch is the principal city in the South Island, with a population of around 350,000. Aptly named the Garden City, Christchurch is a vibrant and picturesque centre with a dry, temperate climate. On the 4th of September 2010, a 7.1 magnitude earthquake occurred at 4:35 in the morning. Damage was minimal and no loss of life occurred. Just after midday on the 22nd of February 2011, a 6.3 earthquake struck, severely damaging the central city and some suburbs. 185 lives were lost. Scientists believe the second deadly earthquake arose from the rupture of a fault running east-northeast at a depth of 2 kilometers and dipping southwards beneath the Port Hills overlooking the city. Satellite images indicate the displacement of the land south of the fault was 50 centimeters westward and upward, while the Port Hills were raised 40 centimeters. To the west of Christchurch, the Canterbury Plains extend back to the Southern Alps. Formed by moraine gravels deposited during glacial periods, the plains today support livestock and crop farming. The Transalpine runs a daily service to the west coast from Christchurch. The train passes over the Canterbury Plains to the foothills at the base of the Southern Alps, traversing the mountains and rainforests of the west coast, before arriving at Greymouth. Steve Stringer has been driving locomotives for over 20 years and knows the Transalpine route well.
The line between the west coast and Christchurch was a lifeline. The run over's around about 220 kilometres. If you start out from Christchurch, you head across the Canterbury Plains. Springfield onwards, you're following the Waimak Gorge up through to Arthur's Pass. There's 16 tunnels that you've got to go through, and crossing over about 4 viaducts and multitudes of little bridges. Basically, you're traversing the Southern Alps through the easiest way possible. You've got to take your head off to the people that built it. They would have had a tough job building that. These guys would have been on picks and shovels. Very harsh conditions back in those days, having to do river crossings with the wagon and cart, and the rivers can be a trickle 1 minute and within hours can be 20 feet deep.
Both road and rail routes run through Arthur's Pass National Park, established in 1929. The high mountains, scree slopes, steep gorges, and wide braided rivers straddle the main divide, the spine of the South Island. Tar and chamois were introduced to these mountains in the early days of European settlement to create a hunting resource. Both species have found the Southern Alps ideal habitat, and populations have flourished. Back on the west coast, the landscape begins to change dramatically. These are the Punakaiki rocks. The rocks were formed 30 million years ago from minute fragments of dead marine creatures and plants, which solidified layer by layer on the seafloor. Seismic action lifted the rock. Rain, wind, and seawater sculpted the shapes we see today. Here at the northern end of the South Island, the Alpine fault veers inland, the resulting mountains thrust into the air. This is Kahurangi National Park. At 452,000 hectares, the country's second largest after Fiordland National Park, the granite walls of the Alps give way to reveal softer sedimentary limestone. This too was once seabed, now uplifted by tectonic forces. Scientists estimate the Alpine fault causes earthquakes of around magnitude 8 every 330 years on average, with the last event having occurred in 1717. Mount Owen rises 1,875 meters above sea level, and the Owen Plateau is an excellent example of weather-worn limestone or glacial karst. The landscape here featured in the first of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring, when the characters led by Aragorn depart Moria and emerge onto a rocky plateau. The extreme northern end of the South Island is the location of New Zealand's smallest national park, Abel Tasman. Covering 225 square kilometres, much of the park is accessible only from the ocean. Kayak guide Callum O'Leary knows the park well.
It's got its two sides. It's got the winter and the summer, and winter is relaxed. It's just the locals and the odd few guides like myself hanging around. And summer comes, it's a different story. People come from all over the world. Feels like part of me lives within the park now. It's like my office. You've got your own things you know about the area that no one else knows, so it feels like you almost are a part of it in some sense. There is a marine reserve where there's no fishing and no taking of any marine wildlife, so that keeps that bit of the park a bit more as it is.
Tonga Island Marine Reserve protects all life within its boundaries, benefiting not just fish, but also seals and seabirds.
You get to kayak around these beautiful bays with new people every day, and I love it. Couldn't think of a better job to do.
The park was named after Abel Tasman, the first European to discover New Zealand. After weeks at sea, the Dutch explorer landed to replenish his water. One of his boats was attacked by Maori. 4 of his men were killed. And Tasman set sail immediately, naming the beach Murderers Bay, today known as Golden Bay. Farewell Spit, or Tuhuroa, is at the northern tip of the South Island and runs 26 kilometres eastwards and a further 6 kilometres below sea level. On the southern side, the tide recedes up to 7 kilometres, exposing mudflats, a rich feeding ground for thousands of seabirds, but also the site of frequent whale strandings. There are a range of theories as to why strandings are so common here, including failure of whale echolocation navigation due to the long sloping beach, the protruding hook-like coastline trapping whales as they feed, and predators forcing whales close to shore. The gannet colony on Farewell Spit is perhaps the most accessible in New Zealand, situated almost at sea level. Despite being vulnerable to storms, the colony continues to grow. The gannets breed on the shell banks, and in late summer, early autumn, young birds fly across the Tasman Sea to the east coast of Australia. The flight takes 8 to 14 days, with the birds remaining in Australian waters for up to 3 years, before returning to their hatching site in early spring to breed. The two-way journey is fraught with dangers, including storms and predators, and there's a high mortality rate. Only about 25% of the birds return to New Zealand. A lighthouse at the end of the spit was first lit in 1870, and the last keeper left in 1984 when it was automated. We are on the southern edge of Cook Strait, the stormy body of water separating the North and South Islands. The Tasman Sea, breaking on the beach, overlooked by a clear sky, stretches to the horizon.